Good afternoon. Welcome. I'm Lauren Saga. I'm Associate Editor for Columbus Underground and also your host for CU Live. Today we're talking urban markets, food trends, and with me I have the main man of North Market, Rick Harrison Wolf. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So he's been at the North Market since 2013, right?
5 years, indeed.
About 137 years into its history.
142.
142.
Close. Yeah.
And now you're talking about a second location in Dublin.
Yes. Still very much in the exploratory phase, but public markets are a civic resource to communities.
Sure.
And in the old days, there were 4 public markets in Central Ohio. Were the last standing. Barcelona, best example of a market city in the world, 35 public markets. So if we can grow what we do, and our mission as a nonprofit, first and foremost, is to incubate and support local independent business. If we can do more of that in other places, it's a great opportunity.
So had the North Market Development Authority been considering a second location, and how did the Dublin deal come along?
In my head, there's a number of, mostly in Europe, there's a number of cities with multiple still market systems, not many left in the United States. I've received a lot of calls since I've had the job that people want to do this other places, but being a nonprofit and with our mission, we're risk adverse, I'd say. We don't have a lot of money to play with. So most of these deals, and also when people want to do these sorts of things, usually in the first 5 minutes what I explain it takes to do them. It's a fair amount of runway of subsidy to operate a public market versus a food hall or a private market. So I've got a lot of calls. This one happened to be the Bridge Park folks. And usually that comes up when all these developers would like to get groceries. And that's just not, groceries at this point in time, I think, are sort of stuck on what the next thing is. So they're contracting more than expanding. And Crawford Hoyne and Bridge Park said, we want this amenity for the community, and we're willing to pay for it, risk-free. And, when I hear that, we're going to have a conversation. So it really is the ability to, and obviously that's 20 miles away from here. You don't have someone coming down to buy produce and fresh fish from the market generally day to day if you live in Dublin, and that's okay, I get it. So if I don't think we'll be cannibalizing anything, and also taking this resource to another part of town. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's an exciting, it's exciting. We're not there, right, but excited about what it could be if I had 18 more spaces to incubate new businesses.
Mm-hmm. Well, when the announcement first broke, there were some concerns from readers about how a new suburban location coupled with the Market Tower planned for the original site might do more harm for the North Market than help. What would be your response to that?
Right off the bat, nonsense. I mean, honestly, it's a cultural. You put these anywhere. I mean, in the old days, the 4 we had were very close to each other. This city was a very much different city in the 1800s, but there were 4 markets. Well, there were 3 up until the 60s, and pretty compact. We have 2 million people in the metro area. I believe that's close or something. We get about 1.5 million, 2 million a year through our doors. Probably 40% of that is tourism and convention, the other 60 being the community. And most of that community, from our data, is really sort of the communities I'd call close by Grandview, Arlington, Bexley. Certainly the city center is a big piece of it, but there's a lot of people we're not getting to. So the bottom line is, if I can better fulfill the mission by having 18 more opportunities for small businesses, then like I said, I see no harm.
Right. Do urban amenities like the North Market belong in more suburban areas? Do you think that it might serve to further insulate suburbanites from the city and its issues, its culture?
I think part of the great thing of this is I can take some of those things to other places that folks, it's just, if you live 20 miles away, maybe you work down here, commute, and you spend some time, but not everybody. If I could take some of these things we have here from the urban core to those places, I'm turning them on to new things. So I think there's a cross thing. I think we could probably, hopefully, find some businesses if we do this up there that are local to that part of the city, that town. But I believe we can take a lot of things here and turn them onto it there, and other places as well. So I mean, if I could figure out a way for other developers and communities to say, "Oh, we want to do this sort of thing," it's I think it's great, and I'm there to listen.
Awesome. Well, Rick, I know that you've been in a couple different industries, mostly fashion
Yep.
and food, and in cities like Chicago and San Francisco,
Mostly LA.
mostly LA.
Yeah.
So coming here to Columbus, how does the food scene here compare with the bigger cities that you've been in?
That's a good one. I think what we do best here, I've been back, I guess, about 6 years, and I grew up as a little kid here. But I think that what we do best is the international food scene that unfortunately not a lot of folks get to. The Bethel Roads, the Sawmill, the Saraga markets. When I left as a kid, when I left Columbus, it really was non-existent. And then I come back to Columbus, and in my opinion, that's the best part of our food scene, are these new Americans, which I heard that term a couple weeks ago, in love. That is the coolest thing I think happening in town. And I feel like more folks are, and I don't even want to say it, adventuring to those parts of town, but it's getting out of their comfort zone of going to a different side of town to check out what's happening, and that's exciting. And honestly, I feel the future of the market, and sort of where I am, at least certainly the prepared food side, is when I have openings, I'm going to be seeking out more Momo Gars and New Americans to open restaurants in there, because not everyone's going to go to 161 or Bethel or pick the other side of town. But it seems like if you could put it in the market, it all of a sudden becomes it's a bit of a gateway. L'Enviette, I from what I know, or what I'm told, is that was the first Vietnamese downtown. And probably that was an exotic, scary thing at the time. And now they're one of the busiest merchants in the market. A banh mi is just as common as, it's a sub, but with Vietnamese. So if we can do more of that and telling that story, that's the goal. But I think that's probably, in my opinion, those are the places I seek out to eat.
Okay, so as ED at North Market, do you strategically kind of pursue tenants that will push Columbus toward that trajectory of more,
I'd say that's
unusual-
where I am now. 5 years ago when I came in, maybe it was a little different as far as the strategy. We have an application, we have apps this high for businesses to get in the market. Sadly, none of them are for fresh foods. We're on our third produce merchant since I started. Mini Super, and the guy came from Whole Foods background, wanted to be on his own. Amazing, but it's more amazing that I found him. I found someone that wants to do that. Not many people getting out of college or whatever say, I'm going to go in the produce business, or I'm going to be a butcher. Maybe on the coasts you get that sort of hip butcher thing happening in Brooklyn and Portland and things like that, but in general, those are very, very hard businesses. So I approach those a little differently than the prepared food thing. To me, the strategy is I want to find these sort of new Americans and things that I think need to be downtown and people need to find. So it's a combination. A good example is Destination Donuts. She started as a pop-up in the market for a while under the red stairs on the weekends, selling donuts out of a little case. Now she's a permanent merchant. So, and she had an application in. So I've got some great applications in that stack, but to me, it's an overused word, but curate. But that's really what it is. It's like, what do we need now? We have this, what's the next thing? And in my head, when a new space, I'm always trying to think ahead of what's going to be a great fit and what do we need, as opposed to going, okay, next in the application list. It really is, it's like you said, the overused word, but it's more about curation to me.
So at this point, what is the North Market looking for to further push those boundaries and bring more unique items into?
Well, I have two things coming in the next, we'll call it 3 or 4 months, that very much fit the bill of what I just said. Some really exciting, extremely authentic offerings. That's about all I can say. I don't have leases yet, so I never can't go that far. But it's going to be exactly what I just said, and I think some really good food and some really good Columbus stories.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say is the most adventurous restaurant here in Columbus?
Gosh, I guess there's a lot of things talking about some of those international spots that, it gets pretty adventurous at those,
Mm-hmm.
but that's, part of their culture. It's not adventurous to
Not so
them.
adventurous
But
for me.
for the person that's not used to that, and I can't even name, there's a ton of those. Outside of that, as far as more sort of city urban core here, right across the street from you, I think what Veritas is doing is it's special stuff, and I hope that more people can try it out and understand it. Watershed, I think I like a place. I'm around food all the time. I eat the same three things usually because I don't like to buy new pants. But Watershed is a place that I can go a couple times a week, and I love a restaurant like that. So I don't know about adventurous, but it's the menu changes, and it's something that I can go a few times and not get sick of. It's broad in a good way.
Right. I don't know. I've heard this from a few restaurateurs. Kind of when they're opening a new restaurant, one of my main concerns is that they want to be able to push the boundaries while still being able
Making
to draw
money.
in,
You're right. Yeah.
while still being able to accommodate people and what they've grown up with.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's this gap between what chefs want to accomplish in the city, and what your typical diner is comfortable with. How do you?
Well, now I'm going to have to just go there. My biggest issue with moving back here and being here on the food scene, and why I sort of seek out these international things, because LA is a city of 80 some suburbs, and there's so much different diversity of everybody from all over the world, and that to me, I love that, and we're getting bigger in that area. I feel that the folks that take one step out of the box here do a really good job of it and succeed. I had the food truck for a minute in my life when I moved here, and I brought it from LA, and I saw what was happening there, and I knew there were 2 million people. I don't need all 2 million people to eat at my food truck. I couldn't even. It's not enough cheese and bread at the time, but if you can find an audience and do your thing, you're going to succeed. The problem here is, in my opinion, and forgive me, is that everybody plays it too safe. It's the same menus all over town because it's safe, and I think that that's actually less safe. Like you said, Veritas doesn't need all 2 million people eating there, nor does Watershed, nor does OYO. What's the name of this spot up there? Service Bar. Those guys are taking chances, and they're doing really well. Rock Mill, here's another one.
Mm-hmm.
And we need more of that, not the same safe. Because like I said, I was one of the early food trucks, and I took one step out of the box. It worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's no reason not to do that. I think there's a lot of room for more creativity, and just, have the balls to do it.
Could the gap there be income? The restaurants you mentioned, there's a price tag attached.
Yeah, those are. That's fair. But Momogar is another good example of bringing that's a very adventurous, for a lot of people, menu, not expensive at all, and it works quite well.
And it's caught on.
Yeah. I think. I'd have to. That's a great question. I think that there's ability. Just trying to think of one off the top of my head that is taking that chance at that sort of mid or lower price range. Actually, I'll say I think it's sort of mid, but Lupo over in Arlington now. He's doing tapas really, really well. And tapas is, he didn't invent tapas, but it's relatively new around here. And I think that was taking a chance being in Arlington. Not super expensive, small plates for $5-7, and it's one of my favorite new places.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you, Rick, for coming on.
My honor and pleasure. Thanks so much.
You have a good afternoon.
Product placement.
So next up, we have local artist Chris Tsunami. Welcome.
Hi, Lauren. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Chris is known around for his mostly music, and kind of approach to writing, his philosophy, and all sorts of different things. He has an event coming up on November 30th. So, Chris, you've been a descendant of artists.
Yes.
Your grandfather, crazy good in photography, your father's in digital art, your sister's in comics, and now you, a writer and musician. How did you carve your own way into art and bring your own perspective there?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess I've always kind of had my own approach to things. And, you know, partly for me, it's almost a challenge is that I'm always interested in everything. So I kind of flit around from thing to thing. And at one time I was really interested in visual art, but I've come to understand that there are a lot of people who have a much closer connection with that. And I have so many visual artists in my life. Mm-hmm. And there's just a very special connection that they have with visuals. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a real appreciator of visual art, but what really makes me passionate is music. Mm-hmm. And it's always been that way since I was really small. I really enjoyed music and kind of making my own music. But it's interesting because it's not anything I ever pursued professionally. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of at a point in life where, you know, I kind of always took it for granted. And I feel like this is a good time for me to be more serious about it, I guess.
Awesome. I know that a philosophy and kind of this greater approach to thinking is a big aspect in your artistic identity. How do you bring that to music? That's
a really good question. And actually, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that, and I feel like it's one of the best questions I've ever been asked. So thanks for asking that. I really do feel like my philosophy does have a big impact on my music, but it's not necessarily one that I sat down and designed. It's kind of more that looking back on it, I say, okay, that's what it was. A big part of it for me is that I'm multiracial. And because of that, I kind of feel that I've never been able to have a solid identity in any one group like some people. So for me, I've always had to kind of be a bridge between different groups and different cultures. And that's something that at one time might have been uncomfortable for me, but that I've kind of grown to embrace that. And I think that's definitely a part of my music. One of the things about the music I write, at least kind of the more instrumental music, is that it's done with more kind of classical European instruments, so like violin, string quartet, and kind of the structures are kind of more European, but then at the same time, it's bringing in different cultural influences, and particularly like rhythmically, it's a lot closer to African music. So African music is what they call polyrhythmic, meaning that it has contrasting rhythms that go on top of each other. So, for instance, I know you're a singer. Kind of in the European tradition, if you have a main line, and then if you have a harmony line, it's probably the same rhythm. Or if it's not exactly the same rhythm, it's probably a simple rhythm that's not going to contrast with the main rhythm, because it's clear you have a lead and then you have the harmony part. Or even if the two parts are kind of equal, they're very much together.
Right.
So in the African tradition, it's very different because what you'll have is you'll have one part, and then the second part will come in and it will be very contrasting. So the rhythm will be completely different. And it's not exactly like one part is the lead and the other part is the accompaniment. And because of that, because you have the two rhythms playing against each other, you kind of start to get a third rhythm that you hear that's the interplay between the two ones. So that's one of the things that I kind of, like I said, I didn't even kind of do it intentionally, but that's, I'd say, kind of the most distinctive part of my own music, is that it's got this European instrumentation and structure, but then it's got these polyrhythms and these different rhythms kind of playing against each other.
Gotcha. I know that you're going to have some new musical pieces debuting at the end of this month.
Yes. They're not exactly new. Some of them go back. When I first started writing when I was in my teens, which is a long time ago at this point. But it is new in that most of them have never been played publicly. And a lot of it is that, again, we're talking about music for like string quartet, music for a couple violins and piano, and it's hard to get that kind of ensemble together. Particularly, I'm not a professional musician myself, so I'm not kind of in that kind of community. So even though these songs are in some cases 20, maybe even 30 years old. This is the first time they'll all be played together, and so that's a really big step for me.
Is there a cohesive theme that you're presenting?
I've kind of placed them in two different kind of what I'm calling suites, but that was kind of more a convenience, and I can't say there was a real strong artistic motivation. It was just kind of more putting the songs together that went together instrumentally.
Sure. And you collaborated with the Columbus Symphony, right?
Yes. So we haven't started rehearsing them yet, so I haven't had that experience yet. But I'm really excited about that, and it's really kind of my taking advantage of the fact that we're doing this big show together. And our main partner is the Cultural Arts Center, and they've been really wonderful. But one of the things is that they have a budget, and they also have a pre-existing relationship with Columbus Symphony.
Okay.
So it was kind of more of my kind of saying, oh, this is a resource, can we make this happen in terms of this music?
So this is all part of a larger artistic kind of piece called Generations of Art.
Yes.
The Tsunami family. So there's going to be pieces from your grandfather and your wife April, also a renowned artist around Columbus. Do your pieces interact at all with theirs, or is it largely separate?
It's kind of separate. And one of the things is that I kind of figured there's so many artists involved in this, I decided to kind of try to stay in my own lane. So yeah. As you mentioned, I can kind of maybe talk a little bit about the show. So one of the main things is my grandfather, Soichi Tsunami, is kind of the beginning of our...
The patriarch?
Yeah, the patriarch of our arts family. And he was much older than my grandmother, so he actually passed away before I was born. And for a long time, I never realized what a significant artist he was. And partly, he wasn't kind of much for self-promotion. And I don't feel like his reputation, people don't really know him anymore, but he was, a lot of what he did, he photographed a lot of the early modern dancers. And he was a close partner with Martha Graham, who basically invented modern dance. And a lot of the really famous images that you see of Martha Graham were pictures that he took. And then he was on the staff at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, and he was on the staff right from when they started for
Like
40 years. Yeah. So, and his stuff it's really amazing. So part of my excitement about this show is that it's a chance for people to see these images that have been kind of hidden in, the back of a drawer somewhere for 40 years. So that's really cool. And then it's a chance. All the artists in my family do very, very different things. My dad's art, he's very into digital art. He was a really early adopter of digital technologies. My sister is kind of more in the comic book aesthetic. And then, of course, my wife April has become really well known for the pictures she does, which are, it's generally women who are painted, the face is painted in a realistic style, and then the hair and the garments are kind of painted in an abstract style. And so that's her basic aesthetic, and she's just developed that in a lot of different ways. So people who come to this show will be seeing a lot of really different kinds of art on the walls together.
Did you help curate at all the pieces that are coming from each member of your family?
No, and again, like I said, that was a deliberate choice because there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen, and for me not being a visual artist, I thought it was probably best for me not to try to weigh in. Although I did manage to secure my son is also an artist,
Right.
and so I managed to make sure that they're including some of his work.
Your son River. How did you cultivate that artistic talent in him from a young age? I know he started painting it in like infancy, right?
Yeah, he did. I don't know that we had to cultivate it. I mean, it's something he's always gravitated to, but I think it does help for him to grow up in a family where art is kind of primary for all of us.
Way of life.
Yeah. So I mean, we started taking him and his sister to galleries like when they were very small. We try to do a lot of cultural events, so we do like a range from local cultural events to big names from out of town. We just went to Alvin Ailey recently. We also took them to see the local show, the Harlem Renaissance Magic, and again, for us, it's important for them to be exposed to art from a lot of different cultural backgrounds. So
Awesome. So what was he showcasing, River?
he's going to be showcasing a painting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you'll be able to see all of that and more at their Generations of Art, the Tsunami family at the Columbus Cultural Arts Center. It's on West Main. And this has been See You Live. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.